Hello everyone. Hope you all are good. What if Naruto breaks for Hinata's innocence? Let's begin. Dream on, dreamer. She stared upwards at the red moon, branded with the Rinnegan and now Tomo points circling the pupil on the concentric ripples surrounding it. White wrappings began forming from her body, made from her own chakra. Naruto-kun, she remembered his body being whisked away on a platform of sand with Gaara and Sakura. She had tried to follow and catch up. She desperately wanted to be there with him, but her body was racked with exhaustion. She barely moved before her body collapsed under its own weight. His eyes widened. He heard her call his name. He gritted his teeth and looked in the direction where her chakra was. He began to set off to help her, but Sasuke grabbed his shoulder. Naruto, not now. Damn it. He looked back to their opponent. He couldn't save her until he had beaten this guy. If he could stop him now, the jutsu would be undone. Fight it, Hinata. Roots sprouted from the ground and began circling her body like bandages, until they had completely surrounded her body. Her eyes began to feel heavy. She felt as though she hadn't slept in a week. That was all she felt doing like now, to sleep and dream. When this is over, Naruto-kun, I'm going to be standing by your side, holding your hand. That was all I wanted. That's all I ever wanted. She remembered her silent promise to herself she had made earlier. Too long had she been running behind him, trying desperately to catch him up to him, to stand by his side, to let him see her the way she saw him. Her eyes closed after trying to resist as best she could. Her mind began to drift off into slumber. I just wanted to be with you, Naruto-kun. Hinata's eyes shot open. A cold layer of sweat covered her. She stared up at the ceiling thinking of everything she just saw. An all-out war for Naruto, him arriving on the battlefield just in time to save her, Neji dead on the ground, and Naruto holding her hand. It all felt too real to be a dream. She sat up, looking around at the room. Whose was it anyway? It was big, not as big as her usual room, but big enough. It was still rather empty, aside from the large bed she was in, the beside tables and wardrobes. It looked like a half-finished project. She stood up, climbing out of the bed and moved towards the window. She smiled as she looked out the window. Konoha, up and running again in all its glory. The sun breaking over the buildings, birds and the wind whistled together as they flew past. She opened the window taking in the lush fresh air. I never knew when I'd see it like this again, she thought to herself, closing her eyes and just breathing, taking her home in, but there was an inkling in the back of her mind, a feeling she couldn't shake. How did I come back here though? She had no memory of her journey back to Konoha. Truth be told, she had no memory of why she was away. All she could remember was that dream, that war. She looked at the bedside table. On it was a picture of all the rookies' teams. From left to right stood Shino, Kiba, Choji, Ino, herself, Shikamaru, Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, Lee, Neji, Tenten, and finally Sai. She smiled at the picture. They all looked happy. Why can't I do this? She was startled by the sudden loud bang from outside the room, followed by the scream of a person. She moved towards the door. Opening it, she found a corridor. As she moved towards the sound, she saw more pictures hanging on the wall. The first was her Genin team photograph, then a picture of her team when they finally became Chunin. After that was another picture, and it was then she noticed the change in herself. In the picture stood herself, Kiba and Shino, yet they were older. She couldn't see the change in Shino, as he had covered his entire body. But Akamaru and Kiba, they had both grown bigger. Kiba's hair had grown as well, looking more wild and shaggier. Herself, she did not think she had changed at all. She still stood the same way, still looked the same way, only her face had changed, looking more mature. After that was a picture of herself, her father, Neji and Hanabi. She smiled in the picture, as did Neji and Hanabi. Her father looked content. Do I live here? She finally came to the conclusion after looking at some of her favorite memories. Ooch, screw this. I'll just go buy some. She was startled by another large cry. That voice. She knew instantly whose it was, as she turned to carry on. On the other side of the wall hung more pictures, but they were not of her or even her own personal pictures. One was of Naruto's Genin team photo. She giggled as she looked at the younger Naruto and Sasuke glaring at each other. The next was a picture of all three of them again. Sakura stood in the middle, stretching out a banner between her arms that read, "Congratulations." Sasuke stood on her left, wearing the Konoha's standard flak jacket. Naruto stood on the right, holding his own in one hand and giving the peace sign with his other. Finally there was another picture of them, with Sai as well, the pale man smiling a genuine smile. She noticed the change in all of them. They had all grown, Naruto especially, so short in the academy, now stood at the same height as Sasuke and Sai. His hair had grown longer in the picture. Bangs of hair framed his face. She could see the back of his hair had grown as well, and he had tied it into a small ponytail. It looked like a shorter version of Jiraiya-sama's own hairstyle. After that was a picture of Jiraiya-sama and Naruto. Finally there was just a blonde-haired man and an astoundingly beautiful red-haired woman. The Yondaime Hokage. She looked at the picture of the man. Why was a picture of him hung up in her house? In fact, why were any of these pictures on display? She finally moved closer to the noise. It was behind the door now in front of her. The smell of cinnamon. It filled her nose. She pushed the door open and her jaw dropped. The living room was large, with a couch and big bookcase. A dining table stood behind them leading into an open kitchen. And in the kitchen stood Naruto, and he was shirtless. His hair had been cut down again, shorter than when he was in the academy, but still just as spiky. The kitchen was a mess. Dirty pans were thrown everywhere. Next to him was a bag filled with cinnamon rolls, some burned beyond belief. Others too undercooked or so misshapen he had thrown them out. They're not right, damn it. Naruto-kun. He turned quickly to see her. He grinned madly and blushed, scratching the back of his head. Damn, I was hoping I could have a decent batch of cinnamon rolls made before you woke up. You've been sleeping like a log since you came back, he chuckled bashfully. Why are you making cinnamon rolls, Naruto-kun? She asked with confusion, a blush appearing across her face, like every other time she spoke to him when there was no one else to distract his attention away from her. Naruto blinked, staring back at her with just as much confusion. They're your favorite, right? Oh, don't tell me you've got a new favorite food. I finally found a good recipe for these cinnamon rolls. He sulked. And Naruto-kun knows my favorite food. She stared in utter surprise, the blush on her cheeks becoming even brighter. What are you doing in here, Naruto-kun? What do you mean? I'm trying to make cinnamon rolls. Naruto looked back at her in confusion. I meant this house? She replied back weakly, her eyes darting towards the floor. Well, why wouldn't I be here? I live here, Naruto grinned back, that usual cheerful grin. Even as he had aged, the smile remained the same smile that saved her from herself, the one she had grown to love. But the pictures. I thought this is my home? She answered back weakly, all those pictures on the wall, she was sure this was her house. Wow, Hinata, you must have hit your head hard on that mission. He looked back with something she sensed as worry, before he grinned widely again. We live together, Hinata, we have been for the past 4 months, you know. Look, we had that done when we moved in. He pointed behind her. She turned her head, on the wall behind her from where she walked out. On the wall was a large picture of just the two of them. Both dressed elegantly. Naruto wore an orange yukata with black fabric on the shoulders, a faint, yet shimmering red swirled through the orange fabric. He grinned that usual grin, and had an arm around her waist. She herself wore a sleek lavender kimono, embroidered with white flowers, a darker purple sash wrapped around her waist. She had that same blush across her face, yet she managed to look forwards and smile gently. Hinata vaguely remembered that picture being taken. She remembered trying hard not to look away and tried not to blush as Sai painted it. But it was a vague memory. She couldn't remember why the painting was done or even when it was done. The memory felt like one half complete. She looked back at Naruto, then to the picture, then to Naruto again. Her eyes widened, her full face went red. And Naruto-kun and I live together. Her eyes went heavy, it was too much. Hinata. His eyes fluttered open as she heard her name being called again and again. She had been sat at the dining table. Naruto crouched down next to her, his hand placed on top of hers as he stared at her face. At least he has a shirt on now. She looked at the black jumper he wore, similar to the standard blue one Konoha Shinobi wore. Maybe I should get Sakura. Your face just went red, then you collapsed. That mission must have done a number on you. I knew you shouldn't have gone on it. He mumbled to himself, sitting on the other side of the table. I'm fine, Naruto-kun. She responded weakly in return. She knew what really happened just now, but if she could play it off a collapsing from exhaustion over the more embarrassing truth, she'd take it. Are you sure? If you hit your head you might have that amnesia thing. His hand wrapped around his mouth as he squinted. Thinking of what could have happened, suddenly his face lit up. I know, ask me some questions Hinata, that'll help jog your memory. Truth be told there were so many questions she wanted to ask, she understood nothing, it was as if she had been asleep all her life, small fragments of a distant dream fluttered through her mind. Nothing seemed to feel like this was real. Why do we have a picture of the fourth Hokage and that woman? She chided herself inwardly, of all the questions to ask, but she remembered looking at that picture after waking up, wondering why they would be a picture like that. You've got a picture of your family up, I figured I could have a picture of mine. Those are my parents, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, he replied with a proud grin. Hinata's eyes widened. Naruto-kun's parents. He finally found them. It wasn't really how she'd hoped he would find them. She had hoped Naruto would find his parents alive, giving happiness back to him, letting him know what a family was. Was Konoha at war? Naruto-kun? Was the world at war? She found her next question, those memories of her fighting with Neji lingering in her mind. Yeah, 4 years ago, you know. His face fell a little. That masked guy in Akatsuki waged a full was for me and Octopops. All the shinobi came together to fight against him and his army of these white Zetsu things. How did it end? She found herself asking even further. The real Madara Uchiha got revived through Edo Tensei. He tried to use the guy behind the mask to revive him so he could put the whole world into some huge genjutsu. But Obito, the guy behind the mask, something happened. He remembered his old self, the part of him that would do anything for his comrades, the part of him that wanted to be Hokage. He turned against Madara. The Shodai Hokage was also revived through the Edo Tensei by Orochimaru and arrived on the battlefield with Sasuke. Kakashi and Obito combined their Mangekyo Sharingan and sent the first Hokage and Madara into some far-off dimension, to fight an eternal battle. Obito was gravely injured, and before he died he used the Rinne Tensei to revive everyone who had died during the war. I see, she spoke aloud, so what she saw in her dreams, was she just remembering the events from years ago? I'm sorry Hinata, I'd stay if I could and make sure you're okay, but I gotta prepare for the cage summit. He sighed loudly, moving towards a cupboard near the front door. It's so boring, all they do is talk. Plus the Mizukage keeps giving me this weird look, like she wants to eat me or something. Are you accompanying Tsunade-sama to the meeting? She asked innocently, watching as Naruto looked back at her with a puzzled look. Are you sure you're okay, Hinata? You sure are acting weird. I mean, why would Bachin be going? He replied, taking out an orange cloak with black flames upon the bottom and put it on. Rokudame Hokage written down the back of it. He pulled out the Hokage hat as well, sliding it on his head and grinned at her. Hinata sat with shock over her face. Naruto-kun is Hokage. Naruto continued grinning at her. Happy Nagato Day, Hinata. He called out before disappearing, leaving her with even more confusion and questions. Hinata walked the streets of Konoha, still filled with so many questions. Why could she not recall anything that had happened previously? She remembered up until pain attacked Konoha, raising it to the ground. She remembered telling Naruto how strong her feelings were finally. But that was all. She couldn't remember the war Naruto spoke of, or anything that transpired after until when she woke up this morning. But why couldn't she? She walked past citizens in Konoha. They acted as if nothing was wrong. They smiled at her, which was not something unusual for her, being in the head family of the Hyuga. But their smiles, they had grown even wider, full of happiness towards her. Others, mainly girls her own age she had never seen before, stared at her with fake smiles, weakly masking something akin to jealousy. But why? What had she possibly done to them? There's Hinata. She heard her name being called. In front of her was Kiba, Akamaru and Shino. Happy Nagato Day, Hinata. We've been waiting for you. We are going to see Kurenai-sensei today. Remember? We agreed to do so after you came back from your mission. Yes. She just agreed. She didn't want to point out the fact that she couldn't remember saying those words. She joined her two teammates, strolling silently between them as they yammered to each other through her. After a fairly long walk they arrived at Kurenai's house. She was sat in the garden with her daughter, who upon seeing Hinata laughed and smiled wildly, sprinting towards her and jumping into her chest. It wasn't hard to catch the small girl, but it surprised her greatly to see how big she had grown. She was only a baby the last time she could remember seeing her. Not a Ni-chan. She blubbered out ecstatically as she curled into her shoulder. She's missed you. To her surprise, the door behind Kurenai opened. Asuma strolled out, a cigarette hanging limply in his mouth before he lighted the small stick, taking a deep long drag. Asuma-sensei, but I mean he Akatsuki? She stared at the man in shock. She could vaguely remember his funeral, the weeks of wiping Kurenai-sensei's tears. Haven't about that in a long time. Asuma mused with a smile, blowing out a small cloud of smoke. I got really lucky. If Sakura wasn't on that mission, I'd probably be. He stopped himself, looking at his daughter intently, before smiling again. Happy Nagato Day, Hinata, from the three of us. Nagato Day, what is that? She mumbled to herself, apparently loud enough for Kiba to look at her curiously. You okay, Hinata? You're acting weird. Did you bang your head on your mission or something? He asked her curiously. Before she could answer, a perverse grin appeared on his face. He leaned towards her, giggling mischievously. Or maybe Naruto went a bit hard on you last night, and you're still a little dazed. Kiba-kun. Her face blushed red with horrified embarrassment. She knew exactly what Kiba was trying to insinuate. Naruto-kun and I have never. Really? Wow. I never imagined Naruto would have that kind of control. Kiba responded, rather surprised at her reply. He knew Hinata was terrible at lying. He did even need his nose to smell that out. I am not surprised at all. Shino responded bluntly to her other teammate. Why am I sure? Because Naruto has managed to control the Kyuubi perfectly. That would take a great deal of willpower and control not to break that hold. Yeah, but still, after 2 years you'd figure. Kiba-kun, please stop. Hinata continued to blush and stop her brown-haired teammate's words. But it did make her think. Despite the painting of them, she had thought that maybe Konoha wasn't completely rebuilt. There was a shortage of space. She had wanted to live independently from her clan for a while. Hanabi was to the future clan head. Even with all her progression, her father even leaned towards giving Neji the status. There was no one her father was more proud of than her cousin. But to be living with Naruto, she assumed it was a compromise for shortage of room to house people. The red glow on her cheeks grew even brighter. Perhaps she had been wrong. 2 years, Kiba said. The painting of them being so close, her living with him. Are Naruto-kun and I together? It was something she had wanted for so long, but she couldn't even remember how it came to be. That was what she wanted more, to build something indestructible with him, slowly, tenderly and with care, for it to suddenly be on her without her memory. Despite the swelling in her heart, her dream finally being reached, it felt somewhat wrong, like it shouldn't be. Ah, Hinata, happy Nagato Day. Hinata turned to see Sakura waving towards her. Sakura had grown as well, being slightly taller. It was her face that changed the most. It was softer with more rounded features. Her hair seemed more styled and waved but had remained the same length. The same diamond seal that was on Tsunade's forehead now rested on hers. Nagato Day, what is that? Hinata found herself asking quietly. Everywhere she went people would say it to her. Some said it cheerfully, others said it with what she could only describe as disdain for herself. But these were girls she had never met before. What could she have possibly done to them? Like I know, everywhere I go people keep saying it. She turned at the new voice. Sasuke had not changed, despite his obviously growth in height and his hair growing slightly longer. He held himself in the same regard, the same look plastered on his face. Wearing a white high-collared short-sleeved shirt with a zipper and dark blue pants with a blue cloth hanging from halfway up his stomach to his knees along with black arm guards that covered his forearms and stretched up to reach his upper biceps. He also wore a purple rope belt around his waist, tied in a bow, in which he carried a sword. The only other difference was an open standard Konoha flak jacket he wore over that. He continued walking and stood next to Sakura, who smiled at him. He almost seemed to smile back, but it came off as a small smirk. Hinata noticed it. She watched him almost relax at Sakura's presence. They both looked at her, staring at them blatantly. They quickly looked away from each other, yet a small tint of pink covered both their cheeks. Hinata, I just saw Naruto earlier. He said he wants you to meet him later. He never said why, just that it's important. She winked at the girl, making her go a darker shade of red. So he gave me the day off to help you get ready. She grinned evilly, pulling out a small bag which had money wrote on it. A Hokage authorized shopping spree. This is going to be fun, Hinata. In an instant the pink-haired girl was in front of her. Before she grabbed her arm, In a dash they were speeding off towards the market center, leaving Sasuke behind, who watched as the trail of dust dissipated the further they became. What a bunch of idiots. He smirked, looking towards the Hokage monument, Naruto's image staring back down at the village. For a second it changed. Sharingan eyes stared contemplatively over the village, but they weren't his own, 2 long creases going under each eye. In a second it turned back to Naruto. And Sasuke simply smiled up towards his face. But still, it's good to be home, Itachi. Hinata walked along the street of Konoha, blushing madly. She felt far too overdressed, wearing the same kimono as the one she wore in the painting of herself and Naruto at their apartment. Though, Sakura insisted that I be dressed like this. I wonder what Naruto-kun wants. She arrived at the center of many streets leading in different directions coming together. In the center of it all was a large statue. She looked at the statue in utter surprise. It was Sasuke's brother, Itachi. The statue was large, at least 25 feet high. His hands were extended in front of his torso, performing the beggar's bowl. His Sharingan eyes were fixed in stone over the village in front of him. And sat in his hands was Naruto, who when he saw her approach grinned and jumped down. He was wearing the same yukata he wore in the painting they had done. You look great, Hinata. Thank you, Naruto-kun. She blushed madly before looking up at the statue again. What is this? Naruto looked back upon Itachi's stony face and smiled. Itachi was a hero. He protect Konoha, know the shinobi world from the shadows. He always cared for its safety. During the war he was revived as an Edo Tensei, but he broke free. Then he went and stopped the Edo Tensei jutsu himself. I couldn't put him on the side of the mountain because he wasn't Hokage, so I had this made instead. Now he doesn't have to watch over the village from the shadows. He can do it now in the sunlight. Hinata smiled upwards at the statue, before turning to Naruto who grinned at her, grabbing her hand swiftly. Come with me, Hinata. That place won't keep my reservation all night, even if I am Hokage now. Hinata was less surprised than she should have been when they arrived at Ichiraku's ramen stand. Whenever the rookies came together Naruto always suggested they should have lunch there, often being outvoted into trying other establishments. But she was surprised to find it closed at this hour. Ichiraku's usually ran open late into the night. She remembered watching Naruto being there, getting kicked out by the old man who wanted to rest after a long day's work, Naruto sulking away from the stand complaining that he hadn't had his fill. Naruto knocked on the makeshift door that had been put in front of the usually open entrance. Tsuchi opened it a fraction. Upon seeing Naruto he opened it wider. Naruto turned to her and grinned. Come on, Hinata. He waved at her to follow him inside. The inside of the small stand had been redecorated. The stools were hiding from sight and a small table with 2 seats stood in their place. Various sizes of lit lanterns hung from the walls and the ceiling. Vines of flowers weaved their way through the lanterns on the walls in shades of lavender, red and blue. It was beautiful. Naruto directed her to her seat, pulling it and sitting her down before moving to the other seat himself. 2 bowls of ramen were already sat in front of them. Almost immediately Hinata began to play with it. She wasn't really that hungry, and all this. Sat with Naruto in this beautiful setting, just the 2 of them. She wouldn't hold anything down even if she tried to eat. Her stomach was already aflutter. Have you had a good Nagato day, Hinata? Nothing would stop Naruto devouring ramen. Emotion, illness, injury his stomach it so he could stomach some ramen. What is Nagato day, Naruto-kun? Everyone I've seen today has said it. She finally asked. It had been bugging her the entire day since the blonde had said it this morning. Naruto looked up from his ramen, before smiling softly. Today is the anniversary of the day Pain attacked Konoha. We're remembering that day, you know? That isn't really something worth remembering or celebrating, she answered honestly. It had been a day of death, so many around her taken without warning, consideration or mercy. The village laid in ruins. Naruto almost being taken by Akatsuki. That's why we don't call it Pain Day. Naruto chuckled a little bit. Nagato was the real guy with the Rinnegan. He was controlling all of Pain's actions. And in the end he swapped his life for everyone who had died in Konoha that day. He smiled a little bit, remembering the frail, white-haired man, and those strong purple eyes brimming through the darkness despite the state of his body. He was Jiraiya's student, my senior. I often wondered if I should call him Ni-san. In the end his true conviction came through, his true way to obtain peace. He didn't have to give the people of Konoha their lives back. He was dying already from exhausting so much chakra, but he did it anyway. Nagato Day remembers that sacrifice. It celebrates our bonds to each other. Hinata couldn't help but smile at his explanation. There was a purity to it all that only Naruto could have seen, as he always saw the best in the worst situations. Like the statue of Itachi, she didn't even have to guess that Nagato Day came into effect during Naruto's blossoming tenure as Hokage. But there's something else about this day, something that only I celebrate. She looked up as Naruto as he continued speaking. To her surprise, she saw that their situations had changed. It was Naruto who couldn't lift his head up, playing aimlessly with the food in front of him. It was on this day I got told something. Something that deep down I thought I might never hear. His own blush grew as his eyes moved to look at her. It was something you said. That is why I'm not afraid to die protecting you, because I love you. Her eyes widened. Of course she remembered telling Naruto finally of her true feelings. But she didn't think he had. He had transformed into the Kyuubi moments after she fell against pain. He had never discussed it with her after, so she assumed the transformation had affected his memory, making him forget the most recent things that had transpired. It was always a worry to her as she may have had to confess to him again, and she didn't know if she would have that courage, that determination like she did in that situation to do it again. But to think he had actually remembered. My dream was to become Hokage, to be respected and admired by everyone in the village, for my existence to finally be acknowledged, but I never imagined in all my wildest dreams to be loved. But you did anyway, even though I didn't know it. He smiled softly again. It was one of the times you saved me from myself, when I thought of giving up. But it wasn't the first time. When I panicked during the Chunin exam's written test, you offered your answers to me. When I felt like giving up before I even went to fight Neji, you placed your faith in me and gave to the courage to fight him. Then there was that moment against pain, when you said those words I thought I would never hear. There was that moment when I almost gave in against Obito. You brought me back. He smiled, taking one of her hands in his own. Her blush magnified at the contact. If it wasn't bad enough with all these, he spoke so sincerely. These hands, they were always pushing me in the right direction, making me stick to my ninja way. We've been through so much over the past years, but I've never been able to speak well about this stuff. I'm not a good speaker. I don't have a way with words. I'm not smart or cool or charming. I start blubbering like a moron, kinda like now. He grinned sheepishly, chuckling weakly as he scratched the back of his head. It's taken a long time, but I think I finally found the right words to say. They're just a copy of yours, but you said it so perfectly I wouldn't be able to say it any better if I had a million years to come up with it. He looked into her eyes again, and her heart melted. Was he, would he, does he finally? I remember calling you shy, timid and weird. But every time I thought like giving up, when I almost made the wrong turn, but it was always you. You kept me on the right path. You pushed me. You comforted me. You slapped me out of my own silly imaginations. You kept me real. These hands saved me. That's why I want to walk with you, stand at your side, to be with you, because you know what, I really love you. Hinata only stared back, mouth agape in utter shock. Naruto sat there speaking of something he might never have. To be honest with herself, she had thought the same thing. Deep down in her heart she thought that she would never be able to get Naruto to return her love, but there he was, speaking those simple, yet powerful words to her. He called himself a blubbering mess when he spoke, but every syllable was perfect, like a symphony to her ears right through to her very heart and soul. All the chasing, the hoping, somehow it had finally paid off. Her life was perfect as of this very moment. Finally everything she had longed for had come to fruition. Her wildest dream had finally come true, and she would never let it go. Surprised lavender-tinted white eyes flicked open as the morning sun began to peer through the curtains of her bedroom. Her neck was a bit stiff, however she blamed that on her hard pillow, her boyfriend's warm chest moving up and down slowly with each sleepy breath, gentle snores coming from his mouth. Hinata looked up at Naruto's sleeping face, with his green monster nightcap on, and blushed madly. She would never get used to this. Her body wrapped around his, her leg crossed over both of his arm wrapped around her waist and her arm going over his stomach, her head buried into his chest. Memories of her missing years were slowly piecing themselves back together from nowhere, until they had fully formed. She remembered the house hunting with Naruto, getting a larger house apartment after he refused to kick Tsunade out of the Hokage's mansion. She remembered every little date they had ever taken. Naruto-kun. Hey, Hinata. What's up? You're. I mean our ninja way is to never go back on our word, to never break a promise. Does that still stand when you make a promise to yourself? Sure. Promises to yourself are just as important as the ones you make to other people. That's good. You see, Naruto-kun, I have made a promise to myself. And what's that, Hinata? I promised myself that after the war was over I would no longer follow you, tracing behind your every step. I promised myself when the war was over, I would stand by your side, holding your hand. I would be with you. I don't want to break that promise to myself, so, I guess, what I'm trying to say is, what I'm trying to ask is. You want to ask me out on a date? She remembered how she finally got Naruto's attention, and cursed herself for all the years she wasted not realizing how easy it was to get the blonde boy to notice her. She was sure when Naruto accepted to going on a date with her he didn't feel the same way for her as she did for him, but it was enough. Naruto either being too like himself to outwardly reject her, or the fact he had actually enjoyed the time he spent alone with her, wanted another date, and what eventually came to be grew from it. He began to slowly reciprocate her feelings back. She looked down at herself and Naruto in the bed. Yes, Naruto was shirtless, however the rest of him and all of herself was fully clothed. She had no memories of doing that with him. When she told Kiba the other day she and Naruto had never done that, she said it without memory of all their years together, but now she could remember the years and still no memory of it. Perhaps she and Naruto really had never committed themselves to each other in that way. Idiot. She was startled by the sudden voice. Looking to the edge of the bed she saw Sasuke in the room. Instantly she cried out in fright, pulling the covers over herself and Naruto despite the fact she was in her PJs. Naruto's eyes opened slightly, his head lifting up to look at Sasuke. What do you want, Sasuke? I thought I sent you on a mission? Sleep still coated his eyes and dried up his voice to a deep, raspy grumble. I've completed it. How long did you expect it to take? It was only a B rank. Sasuke responded, shifting his weight to his other foot and rest his hand on his right hip, gripping his Junin vest in his hand. Then give me a report tomorrow. It's my birthday and I'm not feeling all that Hokage-ly today. Go bug Sakura or something, she will be happier to see you at this time in the morning than I am. Naruto grumbled out again, letting his head hit the pillows and shutting his eyes. We have a problem. Sasuke retorted, even more serious than usual. It seemed to catch Naruto's attention, as he opened his left eye to look at the black-haired shinobi. Sasuke suddenly smirked confidently. There's this yellow-haired idiot that thinks he's stronger than me. Naruto groaned loudly, pulling the covers up even higher to cover his face. Then go fight him and prove him wrong. I can't. He won't get out of bed, idiot. Sasuke only smirked wider when Naruto shot upright, giving him a nasty growl. I don't think. Well, we all know that, idiot. Honestly, I wonder how Hinata puts up with your absent-mindedness. Shut up, Sasuke. I wasn't finished. I don't think I'm stronger than you. I know I am. Naruto jumped out of the bed, almost launching Hinata off it onto the floor. He quickly picked up some of his clothes scattered on the floor before rushing towards and flinging open the window. I'll prove it right now. Follow me. He jumped through the window, allowing all of Konoha to grace the sight of the underwear-only clad Hokage. Sasuke and Hinata could only watch him jump from rooftop to rooftop, becoming small and smaller as he leapt into the distance. Sasuke only sighed loudly, gaining Hinata's attention. He really is an idiot, he gets too overexcited. I'm sorry for taking your boyfriend from you on his birthday. He looked at her, before sighing loudly again, grumbling under his breath, it's going to be a long day. Okay class, we have a special guest speaker today. Kurenai spoke to her bright young academy. Team 8 had all become Junin, and in her eyes she could never have another team like them. Plus with her daughter at still a young age she did not want to go on missions and leave the child alone. So she had found a new way to bestow the will of fire onto the next generation. She had taken up teaching at the academy. She taught a special class, girls only. Teaching them all the things only a kunoichi could do. The importance of female ninja in a male-driven academy. Please welcome my former student, Hinata Hyuga. The young girls all gasped in awe, muttering with excitement to themselves as Hinata entered the room. Hello. I'm here to help Kurenai-sensei teach you of a kunoichi's importance to the village. Hinata spoke out quietly. She was truly an awful public speaker. She never knew how Kurenai-sensei managed to talk her into doing this. And now, Kunoichi are usually underestimated by people who request missions, as men are naturally stronger. But, my friend, Sakura-san, she is investigating chakra control, and she has a theory that women are naturally better at controlling their chakra. She believes that the male testosterone hormone impairs men's ability to control their chakra as well as they could. This is what Hinata-sensei, a small girl shouted out, interrupting her speech. Hinata finally clicked on that these girls were perhaps 12 or 13, in their final year at the academy. Is it true that Hokage-sama is your boyfriend? What? Hinata was a little taken back by the sudden, intrusive question. Rokudame Hokage Naruto-sama, he's your boyfriend, right? A different girl now asked, looking at Hinata with wonder in her eyes. Well, yes he is, but I thought I was here to. How did you get him to fall in love with you? Better yet, how did you get him to notice you? How did you first meet him? Tell us, Hinata-sensei. Hinata began panicking. All these questions coming at her too quickly made her lose what little cool she had coming to give this lecture. The questions kept on piling up, none of the girls letting up on finding out how to get a strong ninja to notice them. Hinata looked towards Kurenai-sensei, pleading with her to help her. This is the other reason why I brought you here, Hinata. Kurenai spoke with a small smile. It is important for Kunoichi to become strong, but they shouldn't give up on their hopes and dreams in order to attain it. You are a perfect example of this, Hinata. The girls have been working hard all year. Go on, treat them a little, let them fantasize of meeting a strong shinobi who they fall in love with and who loves them in return, as both of us have. Hinata stared at her sensei. Even now she managed to surprise the blue-haired girl. She quickly smiled, before turning to the class, who all immediately went silent. A faint blush began to grow on her face. Well then, I guess the story of how me and Naruto-kun met begins with this. The first time I ever met Naruto-kun. It was my first week in the academy. There were these bullies, they didn't take a liking to me. Hinata sat casually on a bench in her and Naruto's garden after her long day at the academy, answering the young Kunoichi's very embarrassing, intrusive questions about Naruto and how she managed to bag him, as some had eloquently put it. The garden extended from their apartment onto a balcony made of wood, something she later found Yamato had created for them. The large garden was covered by walls and a ceiling of glass, allowing the lovely Konoha sunlight bless the flowers and plants. It became a usual routine for her and Naruto on his very sporadic time off, or if she was lucky a full day off. She would press the flowers, plant them and create ornate arrangements with them. Then Naruto would tend to them after her, watering them and giving them life. She was happy to find that perhaps Naruto's only hobby was one of her favorite pastimes as well. She sat with her legs up on the bench, reading a book in the sunlight. She had grown accustomed to sharing Naruto with the village, not like she could complain. Even in their childhood he never really belonged to one person besides Team 7, always bouncing from one friend to the next. That much had not changed since he was her boyfriend. A blush and small smile graced her face every time she had the opportunity to put that title to the blonde-haired shinobi. Naruto tried to spend more time with her now they were together, but his occupation as Hokage left him very little free time. He tried to make it a point that he was still at home when she woke up at 7 o'clock, though sometimes that was just physically impossible for him. He didn't like to leave her with clones of himself either, saying if it wasn't him, then it wasn't real, despite the fact he gained all their memories. He would spend all day away in the office, or trying to spend time with his other friends. He would always be home for dinner, spending 2, maybe 3 hours with her before going back to the Hokage's office to continue work before coming back late in the night and rolling into bed. That didn't mean that Naruto didn't behave like Naruto. He stated he didn't like leaving clones with her, but he didn't mind leaving clones elsewhere, effectively ditching work to spend time with her. He would do this for a good 3 days each month, which he had affectionately named her time of the month, blissfully unaware that that name had been in use for many years beforehand for a completely different reason. Let's go, Hinata. It's your time of the month, you know. She remembered the humiliation that day, no matter how much she shuddered or repressed the memory. It started off as an innocent gathering for barbecue with all of their friends, and it was during Naruto's ditch days to spend time with her and her alone. As much as he wanted to hang around with their friends, he started this ditching thing to spend time alone with her. So as innocent and oblivious as he was, loudly proclaimed that statement, loud enough for everyone in the restaurant to look at her incredulously, and he just stood there grinning his usual grin. She had then politely asked Naruto to not call it that in front of her friends again. She remembered the awkward and embarrassed atmosphere. After a series of probes and pouting on Naruto's behalf, she was forced to explain to him in front of everyone why. She remembered Naruto's wide, cheerful, innocent grin morph to one of utter disgust for the female body. Kiba never let her live down that day. However, she also learned that there was another person she had to share Naruto with. His old teammate Sasuke. Even during the days he would ditch work to spend time with her, she had made sure to carefully avoid the Uchiha, that she didn't know where he was, which was not always so easy, as the Uchiha could have been anywhere, as his only other hobby other than training was taking walks. She was always and probably will always be slightly jealous of how Sasuke managed to push Naruto's buttons with ease, so when he appeared in their house in the morning, almost demanding to fight Naruto, she didn't even have the opportunity to tell Sasuke ever so nicely to go the hell away and pull her boyfriend back into bed and wrap his arms around her. On the other hand, it was Naruto's birthday, so he may have finished with Sasuke and went to see all of his other friends whilst the sun was still shining. They have been gone a long time. She looked at the clock. Sasuke had took Naruto away about 6 hours ago, longer than what their training sessions usually lasted. She was erupted from her thoughts when a knock came from their door. She quickly approached it and answered, seeing all her friends on the other side. Okay. Stage 1. Get Sasuke to distract Naruto, complete. Sakura beamed from the other side, holding up the peace sign. What's all this? She asked curiously, looking around at the mischievous grins on all their faces. Letting them all into the house. Sakura simply handed her a brown envelope, gesturing her to open it. A small piece of paper was inside, headed with the title, Super Secret S-Rank Mission, Naruto's 21st Surprise Birthday Party. She couldn't help but smile. She finally understood Sasuke's unexpected visit so early in the morning, and why she hadn't seen Naruto since. Sakura was followed by Sai, Shikamaru, Ino, Choji, Lee, Neji, Kiba, Shino and Tenten. Even 2 of Sasuke's friends were there. The girl Karen, who had taken to creating a rather good bond with Naruto, she claimed it was due to his warm and bright chakra. However, she discovered that the girl was also from the Uzumaki clan's remnants, so they created another bond through family, as they were related to each other. Naruto clung to her almost as if he saw a sister in her. The other was Jugo, the extremely tall man who always gave Hinata a bit of a scare. He had these urges, which she had learned had stemmed from his clan's innate and involuntary ability to assimilate senjutsu chakra, causing a rather monstrous appearance as they couldn't control it. Naruto, having mastered senjutsu, had been helping him to control the ability to collect energy from nature, thereby helping him to control his transformations. Come on Hinata, you've got the biggest job. Show us where you would like his decorations and presents. Sakura grinned again as they began carting in bags of presents and decorations. Am I late? They all turned when they heard the calm, cool voice. Gaara stood at the door with his siblings behind him, out of his cage robes and in his usual attire minus the gourd. In his hands was a small cactus with an orange bow attached to it. What's that? Kiba asked nonchalantly, staring at the small plant in Gaara's hands. It's a cactus. Do you think Naruto will like it? Gaara asked, with his usual blank expression, however it almost sounded like worry tainted his voice. I dunno. What's Naruto gonna do with a cactus? Kiba shrugged, looking at the cactus and the red-haired cage repeatedly. Cacti are a lot like Naruto and I, Gaara began to explain. They are strong, and in the desert they endure the harshest of conditions. Yet due to their prickly exterior people avoid them, condemning them to loneliness and pain. For years the cactus would question. Why'd I exist? As if it was some relic of the past everyone wanted to forget. However, the cactus never stops reaching for the sun, striving towards its goal, even when condemned to the harsh arid environment it has found itself in without it having a choice in the matter, it never stops reaching towards the glorious sunlight. Gaara, stop projecting on the cactus. Kankuro groaned outwardly, pushing his hand through his brown hair. Well, this is nice, seeing everyone together for our special little guy's birthday. Everyone turned to the window to see Kakashi sitting in the now open window, reading his blue Icha book for the, what was it now, 27th time? Kakashi-sensei, are you here to help with preparing Naruto's party? Sakura asked excitedly, wishing for another helping hand in the preparations. No. Kakashi destroyed all hope in one syllable. giving her a smile behind his mask. I'm just here to drop off Naruto's present. You look like you have everything under control. He hopped off the window before moving to a table, placing a small brown envelope on it. Is that Naruto's present? What is it, money? Everyone looked at the small, flimsy envelope with confusion. Well, I guess you could say that it has the potential to be money. Kakashi trailed off, looking back towards his book. I'm worried, Jiraiya-sama. Ooh, about what, Kakashi? I'm worried in case you die. Ahahaha, Kakashi, have you forgotten who you are speaking to? I know your status as a ninja, Jiraiya-sama, but you've left no heirs. What happens if you suddenly die? You've left Fuyuki's storyline at such a cliffhanger at the end of Icha Tactics. What happens if you die and I never find out what happens with her unrequited love? And Natsutayo and Haruame were left in a deadlock in their battle for Princess Koyo's affections. What happens if I never get the next installment due to dying in some glorious battle? Oh ho! Yes, Tactics was my finest work after all. The subtle nuances of maturity display the brilliance of my writing in that book. But do not fret, Kakashi, should I die all the rights to Icha franchise go to Naruto. Naruto will be so pleased with my birthday present. Kakashi beamed inwardly as he remembered the conversation he had with Jiraiya years ago. Think of all the time he'll save on trying to think of pesky titles for future installments when he sees that list I've prepared for him. Yo! There can't be a party, with me, Killer Bee, and a resident Hachibi, we. A tall dark-skinned man with bright, almost white hair bounced into the room. Where's the little Hokage, my student? My present to give him, it's prudent, yeah. Abi-san, we're having a surprise birthday party for Naruto, so we've had to distract him while we prepare it. Sakura said politely to the foreign ninja. All of them besides Naruto had never really had any contact with the Kumo ninja that Naruto happily called Octopops. That's good, distract and strike for a good time. I've brought the music, my own best-selling album featuring Naruto and some lickety-split rhymes. B spoke back with a grin, pulling out a CD, a picture of himself and the Hachibi on the cover. Bring the Ruckus was the title of the album. Whoa, 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 Naruto is on this album? They all stared with shock at the small plastic case with the CD inside. He never mentioned that he recorded a song before? Yeah, he did too, a secret track called The Biju Names and featured in one of my high-tempo Enka raps of passion. The song is called Bakayaro Kanoyaro, Dadbayo. Yeah. Everyone couldn't help but look at the large man with a weird look, inwardly all thinking the exact same thing. Why are all of Naruto's teachers so weird and ridiculous? It's because Naruto is a weird guy. Sai spoke out loud, giving them all a blank expression that seemed to say, yes, I can read your mind. Naruto and Sasuke slumped down against a rock now that a clone of Naruto's had returned with lunch, both of them covered in an almost equal amount of cut, smudges and bruises. Naruto grinned towards Sasuke, who only smirked in return. So, think you'll ever get used to that? Sasuke's eyes darted to the left. There stood several girls their own age, some slightly older, wearing shirts with Naruto's face on them, black whisker marks made from makeup on their cheeks and plushy versions of the Hokage clenched in their arms. Naruto-sama. Show him why you're the Hokage, Naruto-sama. Naruto could just make it a weak grin, waving over to them hesitantly, causing them to squeal even louder. You're one to talk, Sasuke. Naruto nodded towards the space directly next to those girls. Another group, with Sharingan eyes on shirts. Uchiha clan-shaped fans waving around and Sasuke plushies on in those girls' possessions. Sasuke-sama. Show him why you should be Hokage, Sasuke-sama. Are you kidding? Naruto-sama had Sasuke on the ground 18.67 seconds in total, longer than Naruto-sama was on the ground. Sasuke-sama connected 34 more punches than Naruto. Naruto-sama is Hokage. Sasuke-sama is single and available. That's right, all of Naruto's fans sulked at the comment, remembering that Naruto did in fact have a girlfriend, their heads dropping even lower in depression. They're right though, I did win that fight. Sasuke eventually quipped, looking towards Naruto while blocking out the resumed bickering between the two groups of females. Whatever, you just keep remembering that when I put you in charge of a genin team, Sasuke-sensei. A wry, fox-like grin grew on Naruto's face at his suggestion, which Sasuke seemingly interpreted as a threat. Don't. even think about it. Sasuke glared at him wide-eyed. Sasuke's lack of tolerance with genin was quite well known, especially as they all looked at him starry-eyed and didn't pay attention to what he said. He had been forced into missions with other genin teams when their usual sensei were injured, those kids almost getting themselves killed trying to impress him, hoping that he might take them on as an apprentice. Ah, you need to lighten up, Sasuke. Maybe get yourself a new girlfriend. You were so much nicer and relaxed when you were with Karen. Naruto laughed loudly. And whose fault is it that I'm not with her anymore? Sasuke looked back at the blonde ninja, raising an eyebrow as he gave the question. I don't see your point. Naruto squinted, pouting out his lower lip in response. Hey Sasuke. What is it, Naruto? You know what I realized? Karen's from the Uzumaki clan. I'm from the Uzumaki clan. We're both from the Uzumaki clan, Sasuke. So when you and Karen get married, me and you will practically be family? Karen, this isn't working out. Sasuke remembered that stupid grin on Naruto's face, the wink in his eye and the thumbs up when he pointed that fact out to him. He remembered meeting up with Karen later to break things off with her. No girl was worth having Naruto try to call him brother for the rest of his life. What about your own love life, idiot? I'm surprised Hinata hasn't murdered you yet. Naruto scowled, grumbling out something that Sasuke couldn't comprehend, but his face lit up, beaming widely. Oh yeah, there was something I wanted to talk about with you, Sasuke. Sasuke's eyebrows rose. Naruto's sudden demeanor came at her surprised. He was happy and excited, as he usually always was. But he could tell it was for a completely different reason than usual. What is it? Yeah, but Naruto-sama is more experienced. He has had time to practice beeping girls. Has Sasuke ever beeped a girl? In fact, has he ever beeped anyone that wasn't his own reflection in a mirror? Naruto burst out in laughter at that comment as the feuding groups of girls grew louder and louder, stopping himself of whatever he was going to say to throw his head back at guffaw. Sasuke quickly punched him in the arm, quickly causing the blonde to shut up. Well, there is that rumor. Naruto-sama's first beep was with Sasuke, back when they were still in the academy. Oh really? Please do it again, Naruto-sama. Sasuke-sama. All the girls stopped fight to drop to their knees, bowing their heads with anticipation for a great gift from God. The two men looked at each other, vivid, disgusting memories rearing their ugly heads after years of suppression. They both moved to gag, wheezing and trying to vomit up at the memory. The party was now ready. Banners with shuriken adorned on them hung around the walls of Naruto and Hinata's apartment, along with one massive orange banner exclaiming Happy Birthday hanging from the ceiling. The presents had been stacked up in the corner, so many they were almost touching the ceiling. The music was ready to be blasted on Naruto's signal and food was sitting in the kitchen on platters ready to be devoured, a situation that caused Shikamaru severe chakra drainage using the shadow possession technique to keep Choji in place. Naruto is going to be here soon. If everything's ready, I'd suggest turning the lights off. Sasuke stood leaning against the wall, now in attendance after separating from Naruto. However, everyone could help but look at a secretive smirk on his face, as if he knew their deepest humiliating memories. What's that smirk for, Sasuke-kun? Sakura finally asked him, whispering quietly so no one else could hear. Just get ready, tonight is going to be good. Sasuke's smirk remained as he spoke, raising his hand to flick the lights off. It's rare to see Sasuke so excited for something like this. Usually he hates parties. Sakura thought with a gleeful smile, remembering the failure of Sasuke's own 21st surprise birthday party. When he entered his house and everyone shouted surprise. Sasuke just looked at all of them with his usual dulled expression, before walking back out the door and leaving them in his apartment. Hinata now stood in front of her table, positioned in front of the only open window, the full moon lighting her and her alone in the apartment. She was dressed in a simple purple dress and black heels. The dress was a bit too figure-hugging for her liking, but Ino had insisted that she wear it for Naruto's party, as all of them had donned a formal party attire instead of their ninja attire or day-off clothes. Hinata. I've got Zensei. Naruto suddenly burst open the door, giving her a massive jolt. She never got used to his loud entrances when he came home. In his head was one of the only foods both of them equally enjoyed, red bean soup. She liked ramen, but not nearly as much as Naruto, and Naruto attempted to eat cinnamon rolls, but found he didn't like them. Zenzei was one of their favorite foods, and it became a regular for them. Naruto casually walked in and back, pouring the soup into the bowls that were left on the table for some reason, humming his own merry tune as he did so. What kind of idiot doesn't turn the lights on when he comes in when it's dark? Sakura groaned inwardly. Naruto seemed to ignore the fact that the lights were out and sat down. Luckily Hinata began to speak. Naruto-kun. Maybe we should turn the lights on, it's a bit dark? Hinata asked innocently as she sat down in the chair opposite to him, trying to urge him to turn the lights on to get the party started. Nah, the moon's full and so bright we don't need them. Besides, you're even prettier in the moonlight, Hinata. Why would I want to spoil that with fake lights? He grinned at her. Luckily missed her beet red blush, giving her a thumbs up. But what about your birthday? Don't you want to have a party? If we have one, we'll need the lights on? Hinata asked again, fighting the urge to just tell him to turn those darn lights on. Naruto just shrugged his shoulders. I can have a party later. I want to spend time alone with my girlfriend on my birthday first. I didn't have time because of Sasuke. Then I had to go round the village trying to find Sakura or Ino or someone to help me with something, but I couldn't find anyone anywhere. Why were you looking for them? She asked, genuinely interested now. If Naruto needed help with something, why didn't he just come to her? What could he possibly need them for? It doesn't matter now. Couldn't find them, you know. So how was your day? He asked innocently. Hinata felt that she could read Naruto well enough to know when he was trying to change a subject. It was good. I visited the academy for a while, but I've most stayed at home today. She half-truthfully told him, ignoring the who's staying at home to prepare a surprise party that you won't start part of her day. And how was yours? It was fun. I trained with Sasuke most of the day, beat him up good. By the end of it he was on his hands and knees saying, forgive me, Hokage-sama, I should have never challenged you. It was great. He beamed at her, laughing loudly. Sakura looked towards Sasuke, her eyes becoming accustomed to the darkness. She saw him with his usual expression, looking at her and shaking his head slowly, as if to say, that will never happen. However, it became awfully quiet awfully quickly, something Hinata did not enjoy. Naruto staring down at his food, obviously in deep thought. She didn't like a quiet Naruto. It wasn't the boy she fell in love with. Is something wrong, Naruto-kun? He looked up from her food straight into her eyes and grinned. No matter how many times he did so, her heart always melted. I've just been thinking about things recently, about my future, things I've never really thought about for it. What kind of things? She asked curiously. You know, having a family, what I'd call my kids, the girl I'd marry. He looked at her briefly, giving her another grin, causing the blush on her face to brighten. Have you thought about stuff like that? I didn't need to think about it. I've known almost all my life the boy who I wanted to marry. She was glad she thought that inwardly instead of out loud. Naruto may not know everyone else was there, but she did. Why yes, she eventually stammered out before continuing. I imagine a spring wedding, all my friends around me, walking towards the love of my life. You, Naruto-kun. Then why don't we? He mumbled almost in a whisper, looking down at his food once again. Luckily for her he did so, otherwise he would have seen her eyes bulge out of her head. What? She managed to eventually stammer out in small whisper after a few seconds of utter silence. Apparently Naruto took her silence in the wrong way, looking rather panicked. I know what you're thinking, so I've made a list of reasons why you should marry me. He exclaimed, pulling out a small piece of paper. Reason number 1. I am the Hokage. Reason number 2. If you get married to the Hokage you get a lot of freebies and discounts from shops. Reason number 3. I am the Hokage. Reason number 4. If you didn't marry me you'd have to marry someone who is not the Hokage. He seemed to stress that point more. And that's all I got, but for argument's sake I listed some reason that might make you say no. I'm a bit dumb, I act childish, I'm dense when it comes to understanding feelings, I'm not good at romance and stuff. I can't read the atmosphere, as Sakura seems to like putting it. But I can tell you now, Hinata, that even with all those bad things about me, there will never be another person who loves you as much as I do. I will always love you, Hinata, and that's a promise. I never go back on my word. Naruto then fumbled in his pocket, pulling out a small box. Like I said, I'm not good with romance and stuff, you know. So I was looking for Sakura or Ino or someone to help me pick one of these out, but I couldn't find anyone. Luckily Sasuke was there, but he's probably even more useless at romance and stuff than I am. So I had to pick one myself. I hope you like it. Inside the box was a platinum ring, encrusted with a purple-colored sapphire and 2 diamonds on the either side each stone, and the metal ring itself in the moonlight. Hinata could only stare at the ring wide-eyed, her blush growing more and more the more Naruto spoke. I know it's sudden, and you might think we're too young, but I wanted to show you it now. I don't care if I have to wait 100 years until you're ready to get married. One day I will give you this ring, believe it. Why yes. What was that? Hinata. The blonde could barely hear a whisper leave her mouth, but couldn't make out what she had said.
Yes, Naruto-kun, I want to get married to you. I didn't know how you felt about it, but I've never imagined the rest of my life with anyone but you. Hinata smiled so sweetly and blissfully as she held out her left hand, letting Naruto, who was rather stunned, slip the ring on her left ring finger.
He quickly broke out into a large grin. Yada. We're gonna get married, Hinata. Let's get everyone over and celebrate. He laughed loudly, standing up and finally moving towards the lights. We should make sure everything's nice and clean for when they arrive.
He flicked on the lights, noticing the massive happy birthday banner to him, the stack of presents in the corner, the food prepared, and everyone in the apartment he didn't notice. His team: Guy, Lee, Neji, Tenten, Shikamaru, Ino, Choji, Asuma, Kurenai, Kiba, Shino, Konohamaru, Gaara, Konkuro, Tamari, B, Tsunade, Shizune, Chuki, Ayame, Iruka, all staring at him slack-jawed, wide-eyed and utterly gobsmacked.
Naruto could only blush and grin sheepishly, scratching the back of his head, and chuckled meekly. Surprise? Naruto, you idiot, that's supposed to be our line. Family. Naruto stood in front of a large mirror adjusting his Hokage cloak before twisting and turning in the mirror, making sure he looked okay. Finally accepting his appearance, he gave himself a big grin. Okay. Let's get married. You look so handsome, Naruto. He turned quickly, his eyes widening when he saw his mom and dad standing behind him, smiling happily towards him. Mom, Dad, Naruto could barely make out as he looked at them in utter shock. Damn kid, if I knew you were going to get married this quickly I would have stressed the point for you to read my books a little more. He turned again to see the no longer towering frame of Jiraiya. It wasn't as if Jiraiya had shrunk, Naruto had just grown, almost to reach his height. Please don't, Jiraiya-sensei. You already corrupted Yahiko when you were alive. Leave the legacy you left behind as it is. He turned once again to see Nagato leaning against a wall. What are you all doing here? Naruto asked the ghosts, wondering if this was all in his head or if it was really happening. You didn't think we'd miss our son's wedding day, did you? Minato responded with a light laugh to accompany his cheerful tone. Naruto, I'm so glad you found a girl just like me. Kushina spoke with a happy yet soft and gentle smile. The girl's nothing like you, Kushina. Jiraiya grumbled outwardly in response to the woman's statement. She's totally like me, like... Kushina screamed back furiously at the old sage. She's kind, sweet, caring, and beautiful. She has a weird hair color, and she loves Naruto with all her heart. Naruto could only laugh at the scene, Kushina grilling at terrified Jiraiya and Minato backing away fearfully. Everyone, there was so much I wanted to do with all of you. They seemed to quiet down as Naruto looked at the red-haired man first. Nagato, I wanted to talk with you more about Ero Sennin's teachings. I wanted to talk to you about your friendship with Yahiko and Konan. Was it like how mine was with Sasuke and Sakura? I wanted you to help me pull pranks on Ero Sennin. And I found out you were from the Uzumaki clan too. You were my senior disciple. I wanted to call you Nagato ni. There is nothing to discuss about Jiraiya-sensei's teachings. They're pretty straightforward, but would you expect anything less from an idiot like Jiraiya-sensei? Nagato smiled, stopping his reply briefly while Jiraiya let out a yell of protest. And about your team, I wouldn't know how you feel. You are more like Yahiko and I was more like Sasuke. And like a younger brother's destiny to surpass his older brother, you have surpassed me. He finished with a smile towards the younger blonde. The blonde smiled back, before turning to Jiraiya. Ero Sennin, you were the coolest guy ever. And all I ever did was show you how much of a loser I was. I wanted you to be there when I became Hokage. I wanted to know if you were happy with what I've done to help the world. You're right, you're probably the biggest loser I've ever met. Jiraiya responded quickly with a grin. But that's what made you so fun to watch. There was never a doubt in my mind that you would become Hokage and bring peace. You've done mighty fine work, kid. I just wished you had paid more attention to me when it came to girls. Oh, and continuing Icha Icha for me. The series needs an ending. I've already been giving hints to do that. Naruto scowled a little bit. Remember Kakashi's birthday present to him and all the little notes he put next to each of the titles for future installments, he suggested. I don't care if Icha Icha. Damnation is your favorite one. Naruto finally turned to his mom and dad. Mom, Dad, I don't know what to say to you both, I wanted. We know. They responded together with a knowing smile back towards him. We won't ever forgive ourselves for not being there for you. But you've turned out perfect even without us, we will always be proud of you. Tears began to form in Naruto's eyes as he looked towards the floor. All four of them moved closer towards him, making him look up again at them. All of them had proud smiles on their faces. Let's go get you married. Two more youths wasted, rushing away into the harsh adventure known as marriage. Ao said in a grumpy manner, having traveled all the way from Mizu no Kuni with the Mizukage to attend the young blonde Hokage's wedding. Youth wasted, rushing away, no marriage. Seriously, what is it with the young whippersnappers these days trying to rush into lifelong commitments? Why in my day you were lucky if you lived long enough to even reach puberty. Ow, shut up before I kill you. May spoke darkly and to the point in a hushed whisper to her most trusted advisor, yet still giving him a soft sweet smile. She turned back to the altar in the center of the shrine, seeing the young handsome Hokage standing next to the young handsome Uchiha whose face she almost melted. She brought her smile up higher, hiding her gritting teeth. I'm not jealous. So what if everyone is waiting on edge to see this girl enter in her wedding dress? It's not as if I want to see everyone waiting on edge to see me in a wedding dress. So what if there are important people from all over the continent who have flocked to see this girl's wedding? It's not as if I want the Raikage, the young handsome Kazekage, the Tsuchikage, Mr. Samurai, that super princess actress from the land of snow, the princess priestess from the land of demons, the former Hokage and almost every clan head attending my wedding. So what if she is almost half my age and already found a strong, caring, kind, funny, handsome man to look after her, protect her and hold her for the rest of her life? It's not as if I want to marry someone like that. The sound of the shrine doors sliding open brought the Mizukage out of her train of thought. She's beautiful. She heard the gasps of stunned silence and awe-filled hushed murmurs of the crowd as the annoyingly young and beautiful Hyuga girl entered, wearing a brilliantly pure white kimono with a large white sash tied around her waist into a perfect bow at her back. The crowd started grinning wildly as she entered through the bright light that seemed to be encompassing her from the outside and into the shrine. May's head dropped in depression. I'm super jealous. Naruto turned to see his former girlfriend, current fiancé and future wife all within one single beautiful girl move into the shrine. The bright light of the sun behind her seemed to block out everything, as if she had descended down from heaven in a bright light. His face turned to one of shock, as Hinata stood still by the doors. Those figures appeared again. To her left was his father and mother. His dad had his arms wrapped around his mom's waist, grinning widely. His mom similarly had a large grin while look at him, but had one arm up wiping the tears from her eye. On Hinata's right, leaning against the door was Jiraiya with a big goofy grin he was so used to seeing. And next to Jiraiya, leaning against the inside wall of the shrine was Nagato, with a small but happy smile on his face. All four of them looked at Hinata before turning back to Naruto as she began walking closer towards him. Nagato was the first to move, giving the blonde a small, slow two-fingered salute before walking out of the shrine and into the light. Jiraiya went next, giving him a big thumbs up before similarly moving off towards the light. His dad went next, moving slightly to place his hand around his mom's to walk together. He gave her arm a small tug and she looked back towards him angrily. His dad only returned the stare with a small, understanding smile, tears forming in his own eyes. Kushina looked back towards Naruto quickly, even more tears falling from her saddened eyes. It broke Naruto's heart. He could see exactly what his mom wanted without her saying a word. It was all in her eyes. She wanted to stay longer, to see the end of the ceremony, to stay until she saw her first grandchild. She wanted to see her son finally and truly happy. Tears began to fall from Naruto's face as he gave her a smile back, hoping it was reassuring to his mom. Kushina broke out in more tears as Minato put his arm around her shoulders and together began to walk towards the light together. Naruto-kun, he saw Hinata in front of him, looking up at him worriedly, seeing the wet tears still falling from his smiling face. "Sorry, I'm fine." He laughed to himself in a whisper, wiping the tears from his eyes. He held out his hand to Hinata, who took it and moved to stand next to him. Naruto looked over his shoulder towards the door. The light had faded. He turned back towards Hinata, who smiled softly and sweetly at him. For a second that same light dazzled in her eyes. He smiled towards her in reassurance and turned to the priest to commence the wedding. "Thank you for being there for me, but have a long rest now, Mom, Dad, Ero Sennin, Nagato. I've got a new angel to look after me." Hinata thought back on the day she would remember for the rest of her life. She remembered walking towards Naruto, looking more handsome than ever, donned in his Hokage cloak he so adamantly insisted on wearing for the wedding. She remembered the words she said to Naruto, pledging herself to him, and the words he gave back offering the same to her. She remembered the tinge of jealousy in Ino's and Sakura's smiles. The jealousy seeping from the fact that she was to be married and they had yet to find even a boyfriend. She remembered the wedding's gifts, a display of the weird and wonderful. Kakashi-sensei's present was the one that stuck out the most to her. A lifetime supply of writing paper and pens. She didn't quite understand the meaning behind the gift, but it seemed Naruto did as he scowled angrily towards his sensei when they opened the gift. She remembered her first dance with Naruto. She had never seen him dance before, and so she was pleasantly surprised to see him do so in his own graceful way. He leaned in and whispered that he had practiced so he wouldn't embarrass her. She remembered the song playing behind them as they dance alone. It described her emotions for him with such precision that she wasn't sure if the song was wrote specifically for her. He lifted her heart up when the rest of her was down. He enchanted her even when he wasn't around. And now that she had him finally in her sights, she would never let him go. She was going to latch onto him forever. She remembered the crowd of females at her back when she was ready to throw the bouquet. She was so nervous she threw it so hard. Sasuke, who had been silently leaning against the wall through the reception, was mid-conversation with Jugo when the bouquet landed exactly on top of his folded arms. She remembered Naruto's hearty guffaw on witnessing the following dogpile of young women and a slightly older Mizukage dive on the Uchiha, all screaming they would marry him. It was perfect. A blush on her face grew when she remembered the wedding night. To finally experience the physical bond with Naruto following the most perfect building. She remembered the sharp pain at first, before it eased into nothing but pleasure. The night would have been seen as a disaster to anyone else. It was sloppy, unorganized, and messy. Limbs flailed and didn't know where they should place themselves. The majority of the time Hinata couldn't even look her new husband in the eye. Naruto frequently misinterpreted her groans of pleasure as those of pain, stopping midway to make sure she was okay, to her surprising annoyance, urging him with a strange and temporary newfound confidence to continue. And yet, to her, it was more than perfect. She could see herself enjoying it for the rest of their lives, even if their technique never improved. All that mattered was that he finally saw her and she him. Finally, she and her Naruto-kun were finally one, as the priest in charge of their wedding proclaimed. Let this be the end of Naruto Uzumaki and Hinata Hyuga as two. Please, everyone welcome Naruto Uzumaki and Hinata Hyuga as one. And then eventually, Father, it is my honor to present to you your grandson, Hamura Uzumaki. Hinata sat with perfect etiquette in front of her father in the Hyuga compound, in her father's study. Her father sat in front of her with crossed legs, a small bundle in his lap. Heishi looked down at the small boy and smiled. Hamura, it is an interesting name you chose. Usually the father names their son. Yes, I have named him after the legend that Hamura Otsutsuki was the founding father of the Hyuga clan, his descendants wielding the Byakugan. Naruto-kun had an idea for a name himself, but figured it best I be the one to name him. After what we saw during that war, there is no denying Hamura's existence. Hiyashi responded simply, still looking down at the small boy. He was a chubby thing for a newborn, a small fat face under a tuft of stark red hair. The small boy's eyes opened, smiling and giggling at the man looking down at him. He has your eyes, Hiyashi stated upon seeing the pupil-less eyes under the child's lids, a small tint of azure blue sheening through them. But Naruto-kun's mother's hair apparently. Hinata looked towards her son, smiling gently from afar. He seems to have inherited my Keke Genkai, So Naruto-kun believed I should name him. As Hamura-sama created the Hyuga clan, I believe this child will be able to change it for the better. How did Naruto perform during the birth? Heishi asked curiously, ticking the small boy under the chin with his finger, gaining an enormous laughter from the baby in response. He fainted. Hinata responded with a blush on her face. Her father's eyebrow rose at hearing the confession, and begrudgingly she began to explain. What the hell's taking so long, Sakura? Can't you see Hinata's in pain? Naruto managed to shout of Hinata's pain-filled screams of labor, his hand being crushed by the force of her own. These things take time, Naruto. Just shut up and let me do my job, Sakura screamed back, still working under the cloth that covered her legs. You've been saying that you can almost see his head from the last 15 minutes. Are you sure you haven't mixed it up with something else? Let me take a look, Naruto exclaimed, letting go of her hand and walking towards Sakura. He turned to look at what was happening. His eyes widened upon seeing the mess. They quickly rolled back into his skull as he dropped to the floor in a glorious thump. Her father chuckled softly at hearing the story, looking up towards her. He cannot be blamed. It was his first time dealing with childbirth as well. You have done well, Hinata. You are suited to the role of a parent, just like your mother. I was never suited to parenthood. I should have supported you more, taken closer care to your training when you faltered, and instead I abandoned you. I was never suited to be a father. That is not true, father. She replied firmly to her father's suggestion, yet her eyes remained soft and respectful. I admit I wish I had been closer to you, father, but I do not regret not being closer to you either. If you had kept me close, doted on me and locked me in the Hyuga compound, I would not have become the person I am today. She looked down towards her son in her father's arms. That child might not exist if you had done that. You have helped me more than you can ever know, father, for that I am eternally grateful to you. Heishi sat with wide eyes, before they softened and a small smile grew on his face again. You were always so small and frail, Hinata. I may not have shown it in the way that suited you best, but I have always loved you. A small tear fell from Hinata's eye as she finally heard the words she had longed to hear him say. You know the story of how your uncle died. The head ninja from Kumo attempted to kidnap you. Do you know why I killed him? He tried to steal the Byakugan for Kumo's purposes. Hinata answered easily enough. It was common knowledge for the clan, to protect the secret of their dujutsu. No, her father responded quickly, startling her. Had it have been any other member I would have subdued him. I didn't need to kill him to stop him. I killed that man, because he tried to take my precious daughter whom I love. Hinata's eyes widened as she heard the truth behind the Hyuga incident so many years ago. My brother died because of my actions, and I have lived with the burden of my actions ever since. This is something you must learn, Hinata. To protect your children, you will do things you never imagined yourself doing, things where you cannot comprehend the consequences of your actions, things that will hurt those closest to you. But you will do it without hesitation, because you love them, because you want to keep your child safe. So this is Hamura? Iruka grinned down at the sleeping baby in her arms. They had invited him over to speak to him about something important, but the minute he walked through the door and saw the baby he quickly forgot what he was here for. Yes, he looks like Naruto-kun, doesn't he? Hinata smiled down at the baby in her arms as well. To be honest, she hadn't stopped smiling since the moment he entered this world. Nah, he's all you, Hinata, minus the red hair of course, you know. Naruto smiled towards both of them, before his face scrunched up a bit, looking down at his son in his wife's arms. Actually, he kind of looks like Neji now that I think about it. I'd imagine so, Naruto. Hinata and Neji are the children of identical twins. It's only natural they will share some similarities in appearance. Therefore their kids will also have a few similarities as well. Iruka explained, still grinning at the small, sleeping baby. I guess, Naruto mumbled out quickly, before shaking any former thoughts from his head. Anyway, Iruka-sensei, the reason we've asked you to come today is because we want to ask you something. What's that? Iruka looked up to the two of them, sitting down in the seat opposite them. We would be honored if you were to be Hamura-kun's godfather, Iruka-sensei. Hinata smiled towards the man, whose eyes widened in shock. Hinata chose Kurenai-sensei to be Himura's godmother, so I get to choose the godfather. There's no one else I'd rather have to look after my kid. Naruto added before Iruka even had a chance to speak. But why me? Iruka asked, still obviously stunned by the proposal. Because, you were the first person who acknowledged me as Naruto Uzumaki, or at least, the first I knew that had acknowledged me as Naruto Uzumaki. His eyes quickly moved to her own. Hinata, with a small blush to her face, giggled softly at the added part of his sentence. You were always there for me, Iruka-sensei. You treated me to ramen, cheered me up when I was down, pushed me to become Hokage and follow my dream even when everyone else laughed at me when I said it. You were like a dad to me, and I want you to be there for Hamura like how you were there for me. You never needed to ask me to do that, Naruto. Hinata watched Iruka smile proudly to his favorite student. So does that mean, Hinata added curiously, expecting the answer that she already knew would be given. Yes. I accept. Hinata entered her home after her day at the academy. She had taken after her sensei somewhat. She still took important missions on occasion, but the majority of her time was spent looking after her son and teaching sporadically at the academy. She was the main source of a parental figure in her son's life. Yes, Naruto was there, but his hectic schedule as Hokage, constantly working late or starting early, leaving the village for Gokage meetings, every type of time consumer the job entailed meant he had less time to spend with her and Hamura. Obviously Hamura had no idea about his lack of his father. He was only 2 years old, and no matter what, Naruto was always there for their son. Even with his hectic, grueling, commanding schedule, he made the time to be there for them. It was one of the newer things on Hinata's now countless list of reasons why she loved him. So as she entered her home, ready to begin preparing dinner, she was surprised to find Naruto asleep on the floor in their living room with Hamura asleep on his chest, surrounded by toys that had clearly been played with. She quietly walked over to them, bending down gently to take her son out of his arms and put the small baby to bed. Don't move him. Her eyes shifted towards Naruto, who had one eye open staring back at her with a smile on his face. He's pretty comfortable. I thought you were staying at the Hokage's office late tonight, Naruto-kun? She spoke in a whisper to avoid waking her sleeping baby. I left a few clones and picked Hamura up from Tsunade Bachin, though she wasn't happy with me doing so. She really likes him, you know. Naruto chuckled quietly to himself, shutting himself up quickly enough when the baby stirred on his chest. I guess it's because if she wasn't looking after him when you can't, she'd have nothing to do all day except drink and gamble. Hinata smiled down at her blonde husband, before moving her hand down to gently stroke Hamura's growing red hair. Come lay down with me. She heard Naruto suggest. She quickly nodded, before standing up and darted towards the hallway, watching Naruto's head follow her movements as she disappeared into the bedroom. She returned with their blanket and a few pillows. She bent down and urged Naruto to lift his head, sliding a pillow under it before placing the other next to him. She sat beside him and pulled the blanket over all three of them, covering the two adults up to where Hamura's shoulders rested on Naruto's chest. Hinata lay down on her side, her arm draped gently over Hamura's body. She looked down at the baby before looking back at Naruto, who had turned his head to look at her. He grinned madly, leaning his head forward and taking a beep from her, one she happily and willingly gave in return. Despite the time of the day, despite how alert and awake she was moments before, she began to feel sleep crawl over her. This feeling of content, it put her at so much ease she didn't feel the need to stay awake. She would happily fall asleep here and stay here for eternity, with her perfect husband, with her perfect son, in her perfect life. To be continued, and thank you for watching.